You can also look down there. You can look down there. Easy.
And the point where the camera is
Green dot.
Camera's where the green dot's at. It's not up there. It's here.
So if you watch a little screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easier to watch the little screen.
But if you're watching the big screen, you look like you're looking at the sky.
He will be on, he'll be on both screens, won't he?
There he is.
There is. Pat, where are you going?
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Dr. Fuhrman.
Hey, wow, nice to see all of you.
Okay, can you hear us, Dr. Fuhrman? Can you hear us?
I hear you fine.
Okay, great. Well,
You,
we are,
is this mic working good? Well,
Yes.
yeah,
that works great.
good.
Well, I want to do a quick introduction for Dr. Fuhrman. He's a board certified family physician and nutritional researcher who specializes in preventing and reversing disease through nutritional and natural methods. He's the father of the nutritarian diet, nutrient-dense, plant-rich eating designed to slow aging, prevent and reverse disease, and extend lifespan. He's the president of the Nutritional Research Foundation, host of 5 PBS specials, and the author of 12 books, 7 of which New York Times bestsellers, including Eat to Live, The End of Dieting, The End of Heart Disease, The End of Diabetes, Super Immunity, the Eat to Live Cookbook, and his latest book that we all just finished, Eat for Life. And you can visit drfuhrman.com with many, many resources. And he even has a podcast, Eat to Live. He and his lovely wife, Lisa, have 4 beautiful children. And recently, Dr. Fuhrman and his wife had a significant career move and distinguished award with a promotion to grandparents. Baby Elena arrived in September, and she is surrounded by a huge and loving family. So with that, let's please give a very warm welcome and thank you to Dr. Fuhrman.
Thank you. Yeah, because I get up at about 5 in the morning and I sneak in to my daughter. My daughter and her husband are living with us, and the baby has the room next door. So I sneak in and take the baby, who's about this big. I take her out of the crib and put her in the stroller and wheel her into my room at the other end of the house. So if she wakes up and makes noise, she can let my daughter sleep late. And my daughter usually expresses a bottle of breast milk. So when the baby wakes up around 6 or 7, I can give her the breast milk. And then by 9, she's ready to feed again. So I let my daughter sleep, that extra period. So I'm with the baby every morning.
What a blessing. What a blessing.
And yesterday she smiled and cooed at me. She went, "Coo," and she smiled at me. It's really cool.
We appreciate you taking time out of all those blessings to visit with us. Thank you, Dr. Fuhrman.
Thank you. Okay, so should we go over, just review a few important concepts to make sure it's solidly, you understand them, and then we can question those concepts and then go on to all the questions that you prepared.
Perfect.
All right?
Perfect.
So the first concept has to do with the 4 primary determinants of longevity. And there's more than 4. We can add exercise and sleep and emotional poise. We can add other things, but these are the 4 main ones. Let's go through them one by one. Number 1, it's the nutritional concentration and diversity in the cells, which means every cell in your body has nutrients inside that, and the concentration of the nutrients in your cells are dependent on the nutrients in your diet. If your diet is low in nutrients, the cells in your body aren't going to be high in nutrients. And so that determines your longevity, especially the concentration of antioxidants and phytochemicals in the cell material. Now, the second principle is related to the first principle. It has to do with the amount of toxins or poison in the cell. Because, in other words, we have 2 types of waste products. We have the exogenous waste. The word exogenous means coming from the external world: smoke, pollutions, chemicals, plastics, pesticides, anything we're in contact with that could hurt us gets into our body. That's called an exogenous toxin. And then we have the endogenous toxins. The word endogenous means produced by the body itself. The body makes toxins. It makes urea. It makes ammonia. It makes formaldehyde. It makes lipofuscin. It makes reactive oxygen species. So we have some combination of internally generated toxins and externally exposed toxins that gives your body a toxic load, and your cells have a toxic load. And the ability of the body to process and remove that toxic load is dependent on, sure, your exposure, but also the nutrients in the cells. So the high level of nutrients and antioxidants in the cell enables and turns on cell machinery that enable the body to remove and repair damage from both endogenous and exogenous toxins. So those are the first two. You got those first two now? One and two? Number three is your body fat percentage related, which relates to your level of insulin resistance. So it has to do with the percent body fat on the body, because as a person has increased body fat, it makes the person more insulin resistant, which means the insulin molecule can't get the glucose out of the blood, so it has to make more insulin to produce the glucose to take it out of the blood. So even if this person is not diabetic, if they're overweight without diabetes, I still consider them pre-diabetic because the insulin production is higher. And with higher insulin production, that promotes both heart disease and cancer. The extra elevated insulin is a negative factor for lifespan. All healthy centenarians, all long-lived people are insulin sensitive with low need to make a lot of insulin. Right? Now, also body fat increases estrogen manufacturing, estrogen production. So all overweight people produce extra estrogen, which also increases risk of prostate and breast cancer. Because fat supply is not well perfused with blood, it also produces more waste products and pro-inflammatory compounds like cytokines and lipokines. That's why when people get COVID, some people died who are overweight because they can't stop the cytokine storm because the fat cells produce too much pro-inflammatory mediators. But in any case, I'm just reviewing a few, and fat on the body is immunosuppressive. So I'm going through a few of the mechanisms via which body fat impairs longevity and increases risk of premature death. And I'm saying you can't be healthy no matter what you eat if a female's body fat is above 25%. You can't be healthy no matter what you eat if the male's body fat is above 15%. So those are the upper limits of normal that's acceptable. But above that, 26%, 27%, as you go up in body fat percentage for a female, you shorten your lifespan accordingly. Same thing for a male, about 15%. So we went 1, 2, 3 is body fat, and the fourth one obviously is has to do with the omega-3 index. Number 4, most important, is the omega-3 index, because a favored omega-3 index enables the body to remove neurologic toxins. If your omega-3 index is poor, you build up more of the like dioxin and rotenone and other toxins that come off pesticides that can cause Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, shrinkage of the brain, and also increases of all causes of death. I'm saying right now that even though that book you're reading was written in 2021, in 2024, there's 5 new studies that show that longevity is linked to that increased longevity is linked to a higher omega-3 index, and lower omega-3 index is linked to both higher risk of all-cause mortality, increased risk of cardiovascular death, and cancer death. But we're most concerned as plant eaters with the neurologic deficits from low omega-3 index, considering that the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2, the most well-respected and high credence study in modern history, because we have very few confounding variables, show that comparing vegans to non-vegans, the vegans had a 37% increased risk of Parkinson's compared to non-vegans, a 17% increased risk of stroke compared to non-vegans, and a 12% increased risk of dementia compared to non-vegans. Let me say that one more time. The vegan population, these are Americans, Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2 to take place in Loma Linda, California, thousands, almost 100,000 people in the study, follow them for decades until the hard endpoints of death, and they track their health. And they find that people eat a vegan diet have lower risk of cancer and lower risk of cardiovascular death. But they have increased risk of later life neurologic diseases that can lead to disability and death of stroke, Parkinson's, and and dementia. And you guys should understand the science behind why that occurs, because it's very important to know the deficits or the Achilles heel of a vegan diet, so you don't have that happen to you if you're eating a plant-based diet. So the omega-3, so what I'm saying right now is that the omega-3 index and being a vegan with a low omega-3 increases your susceptibility to exogenous toxins and prevents these toxins from taking hold in the brain. So that, and it's long-term exposure to a favorable omega-3 index that correlates with neurologic health in later life. The other thing, so those are the top four, right? I gave you the top four parameters of healthy aging.
Can you repeat those real quick? 1, 2, 3, 4 for us, please.
The first one is the concentration and diversity, the concentration and diversity of micronutrients in the cells, which includes phytochemicals and antioxidants. The second one is your body fat percent, which determines your insulin resistance. The number three is, Number two is level of toxins in your tissues, toxicity of your tissues. Number three is body fat, and number four is the omega-3 index, right?
Okay.
Every single person should know their omega-3 index. If a person's on a plant-based diet and they don't know their omega-3 index and they haven't checked their blood, they're just being uninformed or taking risks they don't need to take, right? It's amazing that people just walk around and they don't even understand, they don't even try to do, they don't, they don't know where they are, whether they're safe or not, right? Okay, so that's very important. The last thing I said earlier was I mentioned about that in the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2, they had higher risk of strokes. Remember I said there was a 17% higher risk of strokes in the vegans. That's because there are two types of strokes. There's ischemic strokes and there's hemorrhagic strokes. Do you guys understand the difference between ischemic and hemorrhagic? You probably read the book. You probably got that, right?
Yeah.
Tell us one more time.
Because they're completely opposite diseases. Ischemic or a stroke or an embolic stroke is caused by a clot. And that's, you eat more cheeseburgers and more bacon and pizza, you get a clot in your brain that causes an ischemic stroke. In China, in South Korea, they have 10 times the risk of hemorrhagic stroke. And we have more strokes, but they have more hemorrhagic strokes. A bleed is the opposite of a clot. When the fragile vessels in the brain, as we age, get more friable and break open, and you bleed into the brain, that hemorrhagic stroke can cause death. It'll keep you crippled in a nursing home for the rest of your life. They're devastating strokes. They're a leading cause of death in countries with a high salt intake. Now, we've learned that, and that is where the Atkins people and the carnivore people and the keto people advising high meat-based diets can demonstrate, look, there's more strokes if you're on a vegan diet, because they're doing those studies in Asian populations where the Asian population is not eating that much animal products, but their salt intake is very high. So, and we know that thickening of the basement membrane with high cholesterol protects the fragile vessels from hemorrhaging or breaking open. So if you eat a diet to increase the risk of heart disease and cancer, it will offer you some protection against the effect of hemorrhagic stroke from the salt you're eating. What I'm saying right now is that salt activates POW proteins in the brain, increasing risk of dementia. But salt over time causes these microvascular hemorrhages that gradually weaken the endothelial lining of the blood vessels. So after decades of eating salt, your vessel could break open and you could die of a hemorrhage. That's what accounts for. It's the hemorrhagic strokes that account for the increased risk of stroke in the Seventh-day Adventist Health Study 2, and the increased risk of stroke in vegans in the EPIC Oxford study in Britain as well showed a 20% increased risk of strokes among vegans, because you're more susceptible to the chronic use of salt when your cholesterol is low and you don't have a thickened basement membrane in the brain. Is that understandable?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's some of the basic concepts that I think are important to understand, and question me about if you don't understand what the omega-3 index and what to do about it, and about these concepts of how sodium can interact and may put you at higher risk. The next thing is that is important concept is my concept of the caloric rush. Because if I asked you the question, what's the major cause of food cravings and why people overweight? Why are they overweight? Why do they eat more calories than they need? How come there's no other animals that eat more calories than that they don't desire more calories than they require? And why are Americans walking around with too much body fat? Why? Why don't they just eat the right amount of calories for their own body's needs? Why do they have to eat more than their body's needs? Right?
Mhm.
And the two things and I'm saying the caloric rush is the main reason. And that has to be thoroughly understood because the caloric rush is the amount of calories at one time in the blood after you eat the meal. Now, the caloric rush consists of the glycemic load plus the lipemic load added together. The glycemic load is the amount of sugar that came in the blood after you ate a meal.
Right.
So if you ate things like honey, maple syrup, white rice, white potato, white bread, and don't forget white bread has the same glycemic load as eating straight sugar. White bread is sugar. The white flour enters the blood at the same rate and volume. So you're eating a bagel, a piece of pizza, a burger bun, or some, organic, wheat bread, organic wheat bread. It didn't say whole wheat. Wheat flour is white flour. Organic wheat flour, that's white flour. That's sugar. You might as well just eat sugar right from a cube, right from the jar. The point is that flood of glucose into the blood has an effect on the neurometabolic loop in the brain, and it makes you desensitized to endorphins and to dopamine. So you become desirous of the caloric rush in the blood as you chronically are exposed to excess calories. And we're saying here the caloric load, the glycemic load, in conjunction with the lipemic load. The word lipemic load, lipemic lipids refer to fats in the blood. So glycemic is the sugar in the blood, and the lipemic load is the fats in the blood. And how do you get fat in the blood after a meal? Well, Americans get their fat from animal fats and oils. And us nutritarians get our fats from nuts and seeds and avocado, not from fat, not from oils. Because when you eat oils, the calories absorbed 40 calories a minute. When you eat a walnut or a sesame seed or an almond, you're absorbing 1 or 2 calories a minute. It takes 2 to 3 hours to digest that 100 calories. If you had 200 calories in nuts, that's only 2 calories a minute because it took more than 3 hours to digest it. Did you follow that?
Mhm.
There's no calories of fat floating in the blood after you eat some nuts. It takes too long to digest them. So when you flood the body with a lot of fat in the blood at one time by pouring oil on your food, then you create a spike of calories in the blood. So you get this spike of calories in the blood. Our ancestors in caveman days didn't have oils and sugar to get the spike of calories in the blood, and the brain is affected by that spike, and it lights up the brain in the same centers that are lit up by opiates or narcotics. And over time, we become more habituated to be feeling unsatisfied unless we duplicate an excessive amount of calories in the blood. And you're chronically craving to eat more calories because your brain has become dopamine and endorphic desensitized from the high sucking of calories in the blood. It's the same thing. You use cocaine all the time, or you smoke cigarettes, get sensitized to nicotine, or you drink coffee all the time, you get desensitized. You become an addict to the caloric rush. And now people don't, if I feed them a salad with an almond balsamic dressing and a bowl of vegetable bean soup and a mango for dessert, they're not satisfied. There's not enough caloric rush. They got to have some white bread, some French fries, a piece of chocolate, some ice cream, something heavier because they're not satisfied with these vegetable-based meal because it didn't, and the vegetables and nuts and the beans but it didn't have enough caloric rush. Okay, you guys got that concept now?
Yeah.
Next thing we're talking about is GLT-1 inhibitors. Have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah.
Those GLP-1 inhibitors that people are taking nowadays and shooting up with these things to make them think they're going to lose weight? Okay. Here's what you have to remember about that. When you eat green vegetables and beans and nuts and seeds in a meal, when you eat those three foods in a meal, it's a natural GLP-1 inhibitor 5 times stronger than those drugs. In other words, That suppresses appetite, 5 to 10%. People, you gotta lose a little weight. If you really want to get healthy, though, you can't do it with a drug because it's not a strong enough. It doesn't curtail overeating strongly enough. And people maybe should weigh 120 pounds, they weigh 200 pounds, so they lose to 180. They drop from 200 to 180, but they're still 60 pounds overweight. They're not going to drop down to 120 on that. You have to fill the body with fiber. And when you slow the glycemic, you slow the caloric rush, you fill the body with fibers, you fill the body with these plant-based peptides, and you build the right bacteria in the gut from these different variety of fibers, and you have a much more powerful effect. And you produce endogenous GLP-1, not exogenous. Remember, your body don't produce it. More effective. So the way to curtail your appetite is to eat right, not to take a drug. And you eventually will stop you won't feel like, you're not going to feel better the first week, but eventually it'll give you a better connection with the right amount of calories. The drug's not going to do it. And the other most important thing from the nutritional research in the last 5 years is the fact that 20 different corroborating studies show that the more animal protein a person eats in a dose-dependent fashion, the shorter their lifespan. And the more plant protein they eat, the longer their lifespan. And both the Epic Oxford study and the Seventh-day Advanced Health Study too both showed that, especially the Epic Oxford study, so that vegans had more hip fractures than non-vegans did. That actually meat-eaters had less chance of osteoporotic-related fractures. And when we analyzed the calcium content of the British vegans, their calcium was around 500 milligrams of calcium a day, and their protein was about 45 grams of protein a day, which is not too bad. But that's for 1,600 calories, average of 1,600 calories. When you average, don't forget a nutritarian diet, most plant-based vegan diets, like most people are eating starch-based diets with rice and potatoes and corn and peas and bread and pasta, and they're not eating their greens and beans and nuts, which I'm advocating people eat. They get about 15 grams of protein per 500 calories. But on a nutritarian diet, which I showed the diet right next to the Epic Oxford study, where they were averaged 45 grams, the nutritarian diet with the same amount of calories was getting 25 grams of protein per 500 calories, not 15 grams of protein per 500 calories. They were getting about 85 grams of protein a day on the nutritarian diet at 1,600 calories compared to about 45 grams in the Epic Oxford, and they were getting about 1,200 milligrams of calcium. They're getting more than double the amount of calcium. Which now says to people, well, how come more plant protein makes you live longer in all these studies? More animal protein makes you live shorter. Well, there's only 5 plant foods. There's fruits, there's vegetables, there's intact grains, there's beans, and there's nuts and seeds. But the 3 that are highest in protein are beans, greens, and nuts and seeds. And the reason why more plant protein leads to longer lifespan is because eating beans, greens, and nuts and seeds leads to longer lifespan. It's not only the protein content, it's the nuts and seeds facilitate the absorption of the anti-cancer phytochemicals, and they also have a lot of active phenols and lignans that prevent cancer. So the whole, you should say, precision of a nutritarian diet is designed to give us all the factors we need as we age. Because you know how people say you need more protein as you get older, because the ability to assimilate proteins goes down. You need more protein to maintain muscle strength with aging. And toddlers need more. And most plant-based diets allow muscle wasting and immune system deficiencies. They get IGF-1 gets too low because the protein is actually too low for the elderly. And even the zinc level might be too low too. It's not just B12. Zinc, protein, and DHA are the 3 most important factors for vegans to make sure they have adequate intake of, to not to have any needless morbidity from following the vegan diet. Okay, so I just summed up the data showing that, answering the question about protein, that the nutritarian's diet is designed so like for lunch and dinner, like lunch might be a soup and a salad, and with beans and greens in there, and some nuts and seeds on the dressing with some fruit for dessert, and dinner might be raw vegetables with a dip and some cooked vegetable wok with broccoli and bok choy or collard greens with mushroom and onions with a Thai curry sauce made with hemp seeds and cashews and curries, and in other words, the point I'm making is that we're intentionally mixing the bean even a quarter cup with each meal for a total of at least a half a cup a day. We're going at least a half a cup of nuts with each, a half an ounce of nuts with each meal. But people who are not overweight should be eating about an ounce with each meal. We're saying you go to at least an ounce and a half of nuts per day minimum, even if you're trying to lose weight. Because the 7-Day Advanced Health Study 2 broke up the nut intake among the vegans into 5 different quintiles and found that in the lowest quintile, less than half an ounce a day had 40% increased risk of cardiovascular death and 30% increased risk of cancer death, compared to those in the highest quintile was eating more than an ounce and a half a day at all body weights. So even when I put people on a diet and lose 100 pounds, I still don't take the nuts and seeds away. I give them a half an ounce with each meal. Half an ounce for breakfast is two tablespoons of brown seeds, a tablespoon of flax seeds, a tablespoon of chia seeds that are half an ounce. With lunch, they're mixing, cashews, almonds, and hemp seeds for their dressing. Today, I just ate lunch, a big salad. I made the dressing with hemp seeds, almonds, and cashews mixed together with 1 date, with soy milk. I made a lot of it in the blender, for like my whole family, like a whole bunch of salad for 10 people. Then I put in a whole jar of tomato paste. I put in some passion fruit vinegar, and I put in some beet hummus in there, and I put in some roasted garlic in there, and I blended it all up again. I made this incredibly delicious dressing. But you see, the dressing was made though with the precision to know that the fat content of that meal can increase the absorption of the anti-cancer nutrients in the salad vegetables by about 20 times over what you would have absorbed if you didn't have the fat, didn't have the nuts and seeds in the meal. Furthermore, I grow sprouts. I have 4 bottles of sprouts growing on my countertop, and I get them from the sprouting company. And I fill it up, and every day I took the whole jar of sprouts from there, out of there, and I, separated it out, fluffed it out, and I put it in the salad because my components of the salad are lettuce, sprouts. I had scallion and red onion in there, and I had tomatoes, of course, but I have arugula in there too. And today's salad, I put some spinach in there, but I don't usually do more than 20% spinach. So most days I don't have spinach. Most days I just do arugula. But I had everything in the kitchen sink in there today. It was like crazy. Because I made soybeans in the Instapot, and I put soybeans in too. And the soybeans were cooked so I had soybeans in the salad too. Then I had that dressing I just made. I made a big salad. I didn't have soup for lunch because I just had a big salad for lunch. And then after that, what did I have after lunch? I think it's just I had a slice. I had 2 slices of mango and 2 figs because I have thousands of figs in my freezer because I have like 20 fig trees, and the fig season I'm producing so many figs, so I partially dehydrate them and then I put them in the freezer so I can have 2 figs after lunch as like a treat. Yeah, so that's what I had for lunch. I'm cooking a soup for later for tomorrow and the next day, but this last couple of days I didn't have soup. I just had a big salad for lunch. Okay, I think I covered a lot of information.
covered a lot.
So you guys think about that for a minute and think if there's anything I said that you don't thoroughly understand or you want to question.
I do think one question that came up immediately when you're talking about the omega-3 index, can you tell us what, if we get that tested, what values we should be looking for?
Yes, you want to be above 6.
Above 6.
Years ago, I used to think people should be above 4. But as more studies have been done over the last 10 years, it shows that above 6 gives the best chance to have, because we're all going to shrink our bones as we age, and we're all going to shrink our brains as we age, and we're all going to shrink our immune system as we age. We're not going to live forever. But the most effect on slowing the shrinkage of the brain is with people with an omega-3 index above 6.
And what's the name of that test?
Well, the omega-3 index is part of the omega quant or the omega check. So like on drfuhrman.com, you can order a little blood test, a little card, and you can test your finger at home, put a drop of blood on the card and mail it back to us. We send it to the lab called Omega Quant, which gives us the omega-3 index. But I think Quest also if you can't get it done and pay for your insurance, it's about $50. But if your own doctor can do it by sending it to Quest, because for nothing, I think for a lot of people, because Quest has one called the Omega Check that gives you the similar information.
Great.
It's the omega-3 index is the part of the test. Part of the omega quant is called the omega-3 index, and part of the omega check is called the omega-3 index. That's the number you want to be above 6. And that's why people are supplementing with extra vegan algae-derived EPA and DHA with a dose sufficient to keep their level above 6. That's why it's so critical for vegans to be able to know their index, to know how much they should take or whether they need it or not, right? Because the ability to convert ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, from walnuts and flax seeds into DLP and EPA and DHA, those are the delta 60 saturate conversion enzyme, that ability to convert is very genetically determined. So some people make enough on their own. I've seen, but it's like 1 in 20 people. I've seen people with levels above 7 and they don't take any supplement at all, because it's just a great converter from the ALA they're eating. But other people are eating all the ALA in the world, all the walnuts and flax seeds and green vegetables, and they still have levels 3 or 4. So you can't just assume you're doing it right. Because even if you're doing everything right, you could still have a low level.
Okay, good. Can we start some questions?
Sure. I thought we started.
Come in front, Senator.
Hi, Dr. Fuhrman, it's Riz. How are you? Riz Bukhari from the cruise.
He can't see you.
Oh, how you doing?
Right here, you gotta go all the way in the front.
Sit
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, hey. How
Hey
are you?
there, how are you?
Good to see
So,
you.
can you comment on the fact that by reducing our standard American diet processed foods and meats, we're reducing our omega-6s, and that also affects the omega-3 ratio.
That is an important point you're making, that people shouldn't get too frustrated that they can't get their omega-3 index in the favored range until they lose more body fat. Because people are eating so much unhealthy fats and they have extra body fat that they're taking the extra omega supplement and they still can't get their level above 6 because it has to do with the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 on the cell wall. And until you lose more of the omega-6 fat through weight loss, your omega-3 index is not going to be above 7%. You follow me? So it takes losing some body fat and eating right for the supplement to work. So I'm not in a big rush to take my people who come to I shut down my retreat here, but in the last 6 years, I've had more than 1,000 people come through the retreat. And out of those 1,000 people, most of them were overweight looking to lose weight, right? I don't rush and take their blood test because I know it's going to be unfavorable. First, they got to drop some body fat to get their body fat going good. Then their blood test will start to show it's going to be better. You know what I mean? It's too discouraging if you take the blood test. So making a good point. If you're eating so unhealthy, no matter how much supplement you take, you're not going to fix your index. You got to lose body fat, and all the bad fats you've been eating for the last 20 years have to come off the body, somewhat off the body first.
Okay, thank you, Riz. In chapter 3, you talk about the benefits of seafood, but in chapter 4, you talked about the risks. Can you set the record straight about where you stand on seafood? Is it bad for you?
The ribs, are those like barbecued ribs?
No.
I'm just kidding. The risks. Oh, the risks.
Risks.
Because, we see food and we eat it. Well, look, we know there's 3 things to consider. Number one, we dump 1,000 tons of garbage in the coastal waterways every hour, not every day, every hour. And we have a huge amount of agricultural runoff, means extra nitrogen in the water, means overgrowth of algae in the water as well. So you have plastics, you have chemicals, and you have algae overgrowth, which leads to spironobacteria. That's why people who eat fish from inland lakes, lake fish, have higher risk of PDS, Parkinson's dementia syndrome, and higher risk of ALS, because the neurotoxin that be formed from spironobacteria, it's called BMAA is the toxin that filters down into the water and drifts down, eaten by lake fish. But it's in the oceans now from dumping all the garbage, and it filters down in the bottom feeders like catfish and lobster and shellfish and clams and oysters and scallops and mussels. Because clams, oysters, scallops, and mussels are called bivalves. Bivalves are bottom feeders. They filter a lot of water. They suck in the BMAA, and they're linked. That's why people living around Chesapeake Bay and New England get higher risk of ALS. So we're talking here about, we used to think the most dangerous seafood is like swordfish and tuna, these high predatory fish that are high in toxic metals and PCBs. But now we know even more dangerous than that are the bottom feeders like shellfish, like lobster, crab, scallops, oysters, and because they have higher risk of toxins in them. So the answer to your question is, it's like in Dr. Ornish's studies. He showed that he didn't take people on vegan diets. He had them, they were stealing some egg whites and some low-fat yogurt. He took all the nuts out, but they were still got cardiac reversal, even the fact that it still had some animal products. The point I'm making is that we know as you cut back animal products from 40% Americans eat, or 33% Americans eat, to 20%, to 15%, to 10%, to 5%. We know as animal products go down, lifespan increases. But we don't have good data to show that once you hit 5%, going from 5% to zero leads to a significant increased lifespan. So we can't say with a lot of scientific integrity and proof that being a strict vegan is going to give you more lifespan than a person who occasionally eats animal products at like 5% or less. You know what I mean? But we do know that if that 5% or less is seafood, it's not the right type of seafood. Remember, I'm not living in Bora Bora, eating the wild fish that float around the island. We're eating commercial fish with chemicals and of course grown off the continental shelf of China, the United States, and Europe with this chronic pollution. So I do recommend people follow a vegan diet. But I think a person living in Bora Bora could have 5 to maybe even 5 or 10% of their diet could be clean fish and still have a good longevity, predicted long lifespan. It's healthier and you could say less risky for a person who's living in the continental United States like we are, with how much pollution and toxins are around, to just go vegan all the way and use the supplements for the zinc and the DHA that you would get from fish. You follow me?
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Here's one. How do you clinically measure nutrient density in real world practice beyond the Andy score?
You know, it's not really that necessary because we usually do it by analyzing people's diet. But I do have a machine right over here that measures it. You put your hand on the machine. I can show you the machine.
You have to take your laptop with you. Gonna bring us the machine.
You've seen it?
I mean, you're asking me the question. So this is the piece of equipment. You take this off. You put your hand on the laser. Of course, it's plugged in, and it gives you a skin carotenoid score. And the skin carotenoid score correlates pretty well with your level of phytonutrients in your tissues. We know that people are eating bread and pasta and potato and rice. They don't eat enough green vegetables. They don't eat enough berries. They don't eat enough broccoli. And, they're not having their because don't forget, green vegetables, as you know, are the healthiest foods you can eat. And we're a green vegetable dependent animal. And your lifespan is most correlated with the amount of green vegetables you eat than any other parameter, right? How much green vegetables you eat to percent of total calories. So I always say, if you don't like green vegetables, then you better live close to a hospital. Not that that's going to help you anyway, but in any case. So I was saying that the skin carotenoid score gives you a good indication of how much greens and vegetables you're eating. But you don't have to do that. You just look at your diet. But sometimes it's kind of amazing that people are eating healthfully and their carotenoid is still not as high as they should be. You know what I mean? Right. So it's a matter of there's some genetic variable there. You know what I mean? With absorption of nutrients.
Okay.
But it's why some people who are on these low-fat vegan diets, who think it's better to cut out all the nuts and seeds, don't get good scores because they don't absorb the nutrients well when their diet is that low in fat.
Okay, if a 50-year-old woman was trying to decrease her body fat percentage, say from 30% to 25%, could you please place in order your recommendations for her to reach her goal? 1, eat the right amount of calories. 2, weightlifting. 3, aerobics. Or do you have any other suggestions not listed?
Yeah, I have lots of suggestions not listed, but the most important thing is her diet, not her exercise. You can't out-exercise your mouth. You can't out-exercise your fork, right? You can't, what you put in your mouth, you can't get those calories off of exercise, and you can't maintain that degree of high level of activity unless you're a physical laborer or a professional athlete to think you can eat anything you want. Every person, if they want to have optimal longevity, has to study and know their caloric window. It means what's their window? 1,500 to 1,600 a day, 1,200 to 1,350. What's the amount of calories they should eat a day that makes their body weight go down and gravitate to their healthiest longevity promoting weight? And you have to be the best scientist, artist of your own body.
Yeah.
Because if you're overweight, you're chronically overeating. And what I'm saying here, this is the important element, is a nutritarian diet with all the fiber and all the green vegetables and the eggplants and the tomatoes and the onions and the mushrooms and the artichokes. You're eating so much foods that are high in protein and high in nutrients and low in calories that you don't have to eat thimble-sized portions of food to lose weight. You can still eat a robust plate of food and keep your and be satisfied on lower caloric window to match your caloric window. So yes, I recommend people exercise every day, but you're not going to exercise so much it's going to be a major factor causing you to get your weight to lose the 40 pounds you need to lose. That's got to be done with your food.
Okay, good. What's the best
So
way?
I'll give you a rough idea, okay?
Okay.
A rough idea. We go from 5'0" to 5'7" for a female, right? A 5'4" woman needs about 1,400 calories a day. A 5'3" woman about 1,300 calories a day. A 5'2" woman about 1,200 calories a day. And a 5'0" woman about 1,100 calories a day. A 5'6" woman about six. So in other words, I'm giving you typical average basal metabolic rates, which are average amount of activity, not heavy exercise, of course. You can add a couple of hundred calories with heavy activity or exercise. But I'm giving you a rough estimate. I'm not telling you exactly what yours is based on your height, because we're all a little bit different. We're all different. Some people need, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to know what's the right thing you should eat. And if you're not, and I say this, and you know the way I can get people into their perfect window is I tell them if they're significantly overweight and they're not losing a kilogram a week, that's 2 pounds a week, then they're exceeding their caloric window.
Yeah.
If they're within 10 or 15 pounds of their ideal weight, they can drop down to 1 pound a week. But if they're 15, 20, 30, 40 pounds overweight and they're not losing 2 pounds a week, they're eating too many calories still.
Okay.
Every person loses at least 2 pounds a week if they're in their caloric window.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question. What if the person weighs 175 pounds, but their proper weight is 110 pounds? Okay. So they're 65 pounds overweight and they eat healthy and they're eating lower calories and they're losing weight and they get to 140 pounds and they stop losing weight. They should be 110 pounds. At 140 pounds, they stop losing. What they do wrong? They drop from 175 to 140, no problem, but now they stop.
Require less calories.
Yeah, they've been eating, they've still been exceeding their caloric window all the time they've been losing weight. If they weren't going excess over their caloric window, their basal metabolic, don't forget they have the body mass of a 110-pound person, not of a 175-pound person. So their basal metabolic rate depends on their lean body mass, not on the fat they're carrying. They're still eating a diet to accommodate a 150-pound person. They're not a 150-pound person. They only have 85 pounds of lean body mass. They still overate that whole time. They went from 175 pounds to 150 pounds because they were supposed to be eating for the 85, right? Supposed to, if they weren't still overeating, they would have kept losing.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Have you found specific biomarkers like CRP, IGF-1, homocysteine that best reflect a high nutrient diet success?
No, because the person, because you have to be really unhealthy. Because you have to be really unhealthy to have your CRP go up or your homocysteine go up or your SED rate go up. That reflects really terrible health. You could still have bad health and have normal levels on those things. So just because those things are normal, you could still be overweight, you could still have all these estrogen. You're not as bad as somebody who's worse, but that doesn't represent excellent health. You know what I mean? So those are not sensitive enough indicators.
Okay. Okay.
But remember, if your homocysteine is elevated, then you're either low in B12 or you have or usually you have a defective methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase deficiency. So you need to know that. So you can either take more B12 to fix it, or you take more of a special type of methyl tetrahydrofolate to get your level down. You don't ignore a homocysteine above 15, but most people have normal levels. Even people who eat unhealthy have normal levels.
Okay.
What I'm saying, most unhealthy people, the levels are still okay. So it's not going to show that much, right?
Mm-hmm. Many patients struggle to maintain dietary change long term. What behavioral strategies or motivational tools have proven most effective for adherence?
You wouldn't even believe it if I told you.
Tell us.
Try.
The word is compassion for others. In other words, the person has to change their personality to can't have a big ego and have a me-centered view of the world, because then they're always trying to get the approval of other people to try to like them, and they want people to approve of them, and they want to look good. So you're a health nut and you're like a nutrient and you want to lose weight and get healthy and protect your life, you're going to get disapproval from your family, from your friends, from your social connection. And if you don't like being disapproved of, you can't do the diet. The biggest inhibitor to people following the diet is they're looking for externally generated self-esteem, for other people to get approval from them and try to please other people around them, instead of having internally generated self-esteem that comes from your ability to care for others, to think about, to see the world in a way where every opportunity is to have a positive influence on humanity or the world around you, and you to become passionate about what you can accomplish to benefit other people, and you don't need other people's approval for your own self-worth. You have so much internally generated self-worth that you don't care what other people think of you. They're criticizing you, they're making fun of you, they're lying about you, and you don't even give a who cares. You know you're doing the best you can. You know what I mean? So the most important thing is to lose the ego, stop thinking what other people think or care about you, and develop a passion for being healthy, because you can deliver compassion and kindness and love to people only when you're a good role model, and only when you're using every opportunity. So every opportunity to show the person you care about them. So a person says to you, how do you get your protein eating that diet? If I had to eat that way, I'd rather be dead. Who wants to live on carrot sticks and celery the rest of your life? Just shoot me right now. So, so is your response to try to defend yourself, or is your response to try to understand this person, show them care and compassion and love and understanding? It's not about being right or wrong, even. It's about just showing the person that. So, what I'm saying is, every interaction with a person is an opportunity to build your own internally generated self-esteem, because if you would like the way you handled that, you could feel the way, did I show them love? Was I trying to make myself look better? Was I any way trying to build up my ego to feel in some way needing their approval or anybody's approval? Or did I solely just care about showing them care and love and compassion? That's it. And that's the major factor enabling people to live on a healthy diet, because they feel so passionate about they're not impeded by psychological and social disturbances.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. What's the best way to measure zinc in our bodies?
There's no good way, because zinc in the blood is not a good indicator of your zinc stores. So we don't really measure zinc. You could do it, but you have to recognize it's not accurate. And it's not measuring long-term zinc exposure. Neither is hair good either. Hair, they can be rough approximations, but I'm suggesting that taking about 10 milligrams of zinc, let's say, over and above what your diet gets is wise for a vegan, because the phytates in animal products, the phytates in plant foods bind zinc and limit the absorption of zinc from animal products. The RDA is about 10 milligrams a day, and so vegans don't absorb as much. But we know that supplement people as they age, zinc absorption goes down, and low dose supplementation has been shown to reduce risk of cancer and reduce risk of pneumonia. So I don't really measure it. I just give them a little bit of zinc.
Okay, so you said 10 milligrams. Is that elemental or compounded?
Compounded.
Compounded.
So
Yeah.
did that included in his
Do you have a preference of?
Yes. It's in the multi I recommend.
It isn't his multi. Okay. Is a fasting insulin level of 3 and a C-peptide level of 7.4 concerning to you?
Yes. It's concerning because it's disjointed. In other words, it's a person with a fasting of 3 shouldn't have a C-peptide of 7.4. There's something going on here that's wrong. Either the test is incorrect and needs to be repeated, or there's something wrong with the liver, the kidney, or something else needs to be investigated. So that this person needs a doctor to take a look at this and discern what the cause is.
Okay.
There's something else going on. There's something not matching there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Do you recommend spot iodine blood levels for hypothyroid patients?
Well, no, definitely not.
Okay.
The hypothyroidism is not linked to your level of iodine intake in this country. Most of the hypothyroidism is due to Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is caused by an attack on the thyroid gland from people being exposed to plastics and chemicals. Women's thyroid is very sensitive to toxins in the environment. So your iodine you take, so we don't want people to iodine deficient, but if you were iodine deficient, it could cause hypothyroidism. But excess iron causes hypothyroidism too. The RDI is 150 micrograms a day. That's the RDI. So it's very easy that, we're not salting our food. My multi has 150 micrograms in it, but low iodine or high iodine, which can cause hypothyroidism, would be a very rare cause of hypothyroidism. Most people's levels are fine, and testing the blood is not going to be cost effective, and it's not the cause of your thyroid problem.
Do you recommend probiotics or do you rely entirely on dietary fiber and resistant starches for gut health?
I rely on myself on just my resistant fiber and gut and healthy diet. I don't take probiotics myself. But if I had a person who was a stone former and they put stones in their kidneys, there are some medical indications for extra probiotics with certain conditions. But if for a healthy person, they're going to get it all from the healthy food they eat. They don't need to take it.
Okay. Okay. How do you address patient concerns about soy, lectins, and oxalates in a plant-rich diet?
Well, you guys understand that there are not millions of dollars, but billions of dollars being spent by the meat and dairy industry to try to confuse people about nutrition. Because this movement, they can't allow the plant movement to take hold and ruin their dairy and meat and egg businesses. So there's just a lot of nonsense out there that you have to counter. And all these people promoting. So number one, you said soy first.
Yes.
Soybean consumption and even tofu consumption has been linked to longer lifespan and lower risk of breast and prostate cancer. In almost every study, by far, there's probably 1,000 studies done. If you're a scientist and you want to say soy is bad or soy is good, then have your scientific team pull at least 100 studies. There's 1,000 of them. Look at 100 studies on soy and see what it says where they tending. Is it good? Is it bad? They all show it's good. It makes you live longer. What are they talking about? By the way, for the last 20 years, maybe not 20, maybe 18, 17 years, I don't even know exactly, but I hire a full-time nutritional PhD researcher to work in my office, full-time to do nothing but pull scientific studies and pick up. If a person asks me about flax seeds, they ask me a question about, does omega-3 supplementation cause prostate cancer? I'm not looking at one study. They're going to put my PhD that in my office, Dina, her name's Dina Ferrari. She's worked with me for more than 15 years. She'll pull every study ever done on that topic. And she'll review every study, throwing out the outliers, the bad studies, picking the top 15, 20, and seeing where it leads you. In other words, you need to where the preponderance of evidence is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the preponderance of evidence of soy shows it extends lifespan and it makes you live longer. So anyway, I still want people to eat a variety of beans, not only eat soy, but I eat soybeans with other beans and I eat tofu with other beans. I'm still eating a variety of beans. The only problem with too much soy is it could limit, you're not eating the other beans that you should be eating if you just eat too much soy. But as long as you're in your caloric window and you're still eating a variety of different types of beans, then you're fine with your soy intake, right? The next question was about lectins. More nonsense from this guy, Gundry.
Yes.
And listen how much money he puts out for ads on the internet, right? 10 million a month in ads. I don't even put out, $10,000 a month in ads. He's putting out 10 million a month in ads. So his message out there about lectins, everybody's talking about lectins because he spends 10 million on his internet ads, his Facebook ads. But in any case, it's true that when beans are not cooked adequately, the lectins can cause a problem. That's why you want to use an Instapot and cook your beans adequately. It doesn't mean you want to avoid vegetables and beans. That's nonsense. Beans are linked to longer lifespan. But yes, you shouldn't eat. I went to one of those cruises, I think just recently, and one of the meals had the beans was too hard. They weren't like cooked soft. So I didn't eat the beans. They weren't cooked soft. They were crunchy. They didn't cook them enough. So yes, lectins are only a problem when beans are not cooked enough, not cooked sufficiently. Your beans should be cooked so they're soft.
Right.
Right.
The next question was about the oxalates, right?
Yes.
Right. The four plant foods that are high in oxalates are spinach, beet tops, Swiss chard, parsley, and rhubarb. But who eats rhubarb, you know? So we're talking about spinach, beet tops, and Swiss chard mostly, right? And most of us, because they bind calcium, we shouldn't eat more than 25% of our raw salad intake from those foods, right? I eat some spinach in my salad once in a while, or when I put it, I don't put it in the major. I don't make a spinach salad. I just put some spinach in with my lettuce. You know what I mean? But people who are stone formers, who have a tendency to form kidney stones, they should avoid those foods even more strictly than 25%. They should try to probably not even eat those four foods. But keep in mind, what's the major factor causing the precipitation of calcium oxalate stones to form in the urine? It's animal protein. You're more sensitized to oxalates being precipitated in the urine when you have an acidic urine that's caused by eating too much animal protein. So us vegans can tolerate the oxalates without forming stones. But that doesn't mean there aren't some unique individual people who still might form stones, and we need to cut out the oxalates or cut down the oxalates. There's still some oxalates in other foods, but by limiting those four, you got the major majority out of your diet.
Right. Okay, good. For older adults or athletes, how do you ensure adequate protein intake while maintaining a low calorie density, high nutrient diet?
I did talk about that already.
Yes.
It's that I add hemp seeds.
Yes.
Well, I advise professional athletes all over the world, including some Olympic, champions and stuff. And Novik Djokovic, you know who he is?
Oh, yeah.
He's a nutritarian, right? But anyway, what they do, they need more protein. They get a protein. They get the protein, but they add hemp seeds into their smoothies or to the breakfast cereal, or they get Mediterranean pine nuts, which are really high in protein, right? Or they have soybeans or tofu with the meal. So they eat the greens. It's the combination. Remember, I told you went from 15 grams of protein per 500 calories to 25 grams of protein per 500 calories. So now you have LeBron James at 6'10", and he requires 4,000 calories a day, not the 1,500 you require, right? And he's still getting 25 grams of protein per 500 calories. Yikes, he needs 4,000 calories for all the exercise he's doing. That's 8 times 25. That's almost 400 grams of protein. That's enough protein for the biggest bodybuilder. You know what I mean? That's tons of protein on this diet. And we just bump the protein up by making sure they have the beans or the tofu with the seeds or the high protein nuts or seeds with the meals. So they, even Brenda Davis is a friend of mine, is a dietitian from Canada. She puts a little black lentils into her oatmeal in the morning. I don't even bother doing that. I just put my flax seeds, my chia seeds, and I put a tablespoon of ground of wheat germ protein, of raw wheat germ in mine, which has spermidine, which is an anti-cancer, and it has extra protein. So my high protein breakfast is just like, I don't even put much oats in there. A little bit of oats, a little bit of quinoa. It's mostly flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds, and wheat germ with my cup of blueberries and maybe I'll flavor it with maybe my sour cherry syrup, my sour cherry concentrate, and I'll put the berries in, the wild blueberries in there, or some of the frozen berries, and I'll have this breakfast. That's a high protein breakfast. I got a lot of grams of protein in that thing, So your protein needs are proportional to your caloric needs. You understand, if you're a major athlete, your caloric needs go up. If your caloric needs go up, your protein needs go up parallel to your calorie needs go up. Your protein needs go down as your caloric needs go down. So the nutritarian diet is a relatively high protein plant-based diet because we have greens, beans, and nuts and seeds with the meals.
Yes. Okay, good. Does anyone else have any other questions before we leave? Anybody else have any other questions? The coconut one. Oh, yeah, that's right. I do have one. Yeah, yep. In this book, you advocate for coconut and coconut oil for depression and coconut in recipes. Do you still believe this?
No, I don't think that's true in the book. I think you mixed me up with somebody else. I may occasionally put some coconut flakes to flavor a dressing or to flavor a Thai curry sauce, but I don't advocate coconut oil or for depression. I'm thinking that you're on the book. I'm
Okay,
thinking you mixed
okay.
me up with somebody else.
Okay, well, that answers that one. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, be kind of loud, yeah.
Well, I have a question about when you were talking about weight loss. Does a nutritarian need to be concerned about muscle loss in addition to the fat loss?
That's an excellent question because here's what people don't understand. That they have to necessarily lose muscle loss when they're losing fat, or they're never going to get to their favorite weight. Because when you get extra large, you get extra fat on the body, but you also get extra muscle. If you're carrying on an extra 50-pound sack of fat, your legs get bigger, your buttocks gets bigger, you get more muscle too. The problem is they see them losing weight and they say, oh, I'm losing fat, but I'm losing muscle with it. But you're supposed to lose muscle with it. Get to be smaller. Get strong for your size, but don't, do push-ups, do chins, be agile, be quick, but get some of the extra muscle off too. Don't worry about that. You're getting plenty of protein, and do strength training, exercise. But other than eat the healthy diet and exercise, including it prevents osteoporosis, don't focus on that and think it's bad if you lost some muscle. The weightlifting community and the training community is so focused on high protein diets and getting people not to lose muscle that nobody can lose any weight. They just keep being overweight because they keep feeding them too many calories and too much protein. They're too psychotically involved with thinking they have to get protein and not lose muscle tissue. And I'm saying just stop focusing on that and eat less, exercise a lot, and get lean.
Thank you.
Are there
Go ahead.
Dr. Fuhrman, are there any randomized controlled trials that you're running that people can enroll in looking at the nutritarian diet?
I don't know of any randomized controlled trials ever done on any diet in the history of science. Because we're talking about that's why the 7-day event health study 2, which is a long-term epidemiologic study, not randomized control. They didn't say take 1,000 people and split it and randomize them to some people follow this diet and some people follow that diet and follow them for 30 years and see what happens whether they die. There's no such diet study ever been done in human history. But we have so many epidemiologic studies, and the reason why I'm giving the 7-day event health study 2 so much credence is because it's like a randomized controlled style. Because among the 7-day Adventists, they all don't smoke cigarettes, they all don't drink alcohol, they're a relatively healthy group. And the people that are eating animal products versus not, they're not really junk food, fast food eaters as much as the conventional Americans. In other words, there's not as many confounding variables. So the two groups that are followed have more similarities than differences. So we can look at the variable that's been looked at. So what I'm saying is that, yes, we have 1,000 studies on this diet, but they're not randomized controlled because there's no randomized controlled trials on any diet, Now, I have a study on 760 people following a nutritarian diet and showed their amount of calories they desired went down. And they had less false hunger. And I have another study on 450 people showed their blood pressure went down 26 points. And I have another study on diabetics and cholesterol levels dropped. But they're not randomized controlled. They're following a cohort who are eating really healthy. I don't have to put another cohort in there following who were randomized because I could just use the American people on the American diet. You know what I mean? Or the person itself, how much they improved after they changed their diet. Because it's impossible to have the money to do a randomized. You'd have to have millions and millions of dollars and be able to have the study be passed on for other generations, and it's just too impossible to do a study like that. That's why the people, because drugs, you can do randomized control with drugs because you have placebos and you give them a fake pill and the study lasts for 6 to 12 months. But those type of studies don't fit for diets, You can't do a control that for you can't give them a placebo diet. You can't randomize and tell you eat this diet, we're going to give you to eat for the rest of your life. You've got to follow this diet. You've got to follow that unhealthy diet. It just can't be done.
Well, I think we have taken up enough of your time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you guys, and thanks for doing the book and doing the book club and being enthusiastically interested in this subject matter. Phenomenal. That's great.
Well, if you just know that if you or any of your family ever comes to Dallas, has any kind of event, you have a whole team of people that will be volunteers and help you out in any way. So
Great.
that.
Come to just to let you know this, I'm doing August 30th to September 4th next year. At Paradise Point, an island off the coast of San Diego, we're doing a 5.5-day vacation with lots of fun, games, kayaking, paddleboarding, pickleball, scavenger hunts, super great gourmet food, cooking, great cooking and some lectures in there, but not so you go to these conferences and you got like one lecture after another all day long, and there's no chance for fun. You're just stuck in a chair all day. And plus every lecturer says the same thing anyway. They're all like redundantly saying the same thing the other lecturer said, and they're contradicting each other with bad stuff. So I'm saying on this event, if you're interested, come to my website and join us on this healthy vacation next September at Paradise Point in San Diego.
What is your website?
drfuhrman.com. Hit the events page and you'll see the event.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
signed up already.
Nice.
He's going. Okay, thank you, Dr. Fuhrman. You go back to your family, and we really appreciate all that all of you all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everybody.
That day